Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Jack Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to this episode of The Gap. Today we have a very special guest, someone that I'm extremely excited to talk with and have a great conversation with. And if you've seen my post before, he is on my Mount Rushmore as one of my most influential coaches that have shaped my coaching philosophies and methodologies over the years. And I'm beyond excited to have this conversation with him. The one and only Dan Fichter, Want to Get Fast. Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be here. And thanks for all those kind words. I think it's a tribute to me being as old as I am and having been around a lot of great people to learn from. But I appreciate it.
You talking about Jay Schroeder saying that's like your Bigfoot that you're always chasing. That's how I feel. I feel like it trickles down in generations. That's how I feel with you, Corfist, Cal, and then even DB Hammer's work and Jay Schroeder. So I'm excited to hear more about just an introductory of your learning and how you've come to all your conclusions and your connecting dots, which you were just talking about. So go into a little bit of a brief background on your end.
Yeah, my life has been about collecting dots, performance dots, I call it. It started meeting Chris Corfist back, I don't know, maybe 20 some odd years ago, maybe 30 years ago now at this point. And there wasn't a lot of action on the internet outside of some websites or chats that you could get into with guys like Dr. Mel Siff and Super Training. And that's probably where I started most of my just wanting to know more about what the hell's going on. I mean, everybody wanted to lift weights. Everybody wanted those powerlifting numbers. But a lot of times that wasn't transferring to the field of play. And so I made my way out to Mel Siff's place and kind of parked in his basement and was basically like, teach me what you know. And he was a lot, and all the great ones are, he was a lot like Jay Schroeder. He wasn't the friendliest guy in the world because he was so damn smart that he wanted to make sure that you were there for the right reasons. So I remember my first time meeting him, he put me in his basement, which was a full library from one wall to the next, books everywhere, Russian books, Chinese, you name it. And it was literature on sports performance. And he said, what's your thing? I said, I love speed. I'm a speed strength guy. I hate cardio. I hate any type of long distance stuff. So he's like, all right, you go over on this side of the room. So I'm like, all right. He goes, any book you want, start reading. Okay. I go over to the side, I pick out a book and it's on cardio training. I'm like, well, I don't want to read this stuff. I came all the way here to learn about power and strength and speed. He's like, well, you need to study why you don't want to do that stuff and become an expert in it. And then that'll tell you where you really want to end up. So I'm like, I still didn't get it. I'm sitting in a room with all kinds of great literature on what I'm interested in, and he wants me to study what I can't stand. And then he said, you know, if you're married or in a relationship and you're arguing with your spouse, in the middle of the argument, switch sides. And you argue for her and she argues for you, right in the middle of the argument. And tell me how it works out. And I'm like, man, then a bunch of years go by and I kind of understood what he meant. Like, you have to understand why you believe in something that you believe in, because you have to be an expert in why you don't like something else. So I took a long look at Olympic weightlifting. I took a long look at powerlifting and cardiovascular work and really tried to become a student of why I want to do certain things and why I don't want to do certain things. And that stuck with me for a long time. So then we met Corfist. We started going around to different places and researching, and DB Hammer came involved. And from there, it's just been about connecting dots. And I've been blessed to talk with a lot of great strength and conditioning coaches. And some of them I don't agree anything with, but their ability to explain their belief system helps me understand why I molded the way I molded out to be. So just blessed in that regard. I mean, Jay Schroeder was probably the most brilliant, but he wasn't the nicest dude in the world. He made you pay for what you got. And I'm not talking about financially. It's just talking about how could you be so stupid and not know this? And I'm like, holy cow, I didn't even know it existed, let alone So it was a struggle learning, but I'm one of those guys, and I tell this to my kids I coach, that it doesn't matter what you say to me to try to bring me down or to try to motivate me. I'm going to be there and I'm going to try to learn it. And that's how I look at it now. I'm still trying to learn. I feel like there's a race and I'm behind.
I've heard people say the same thing about Jay and how he was very strict in who he worked with, and he had a very high level of like a high level entry point in order to even just have a conversation with him. And this was talking about connecting dots because I have my theory for it with like the PIPES acronym, which I've talked about. Do you think he was that hard in order to elicit an emotional response from you or from others trying to learn from him, or any type of response in the same context as you might get for athletic performance, but on the flip end for being a coach willing to learn new information?
No, I don't, but I do think what you're saying is very true. I'm not saying he didn't do that, but I don't believe that's why he did it. I believe he just wanted to make sure you were in it for the right reason, which ultimately spins out to what you're talking about. You have to be able to take the negative and be able to still stay focused on what the goal is. And when you talk about those long duration isometrics, it's about your brain staying online for that period of time. And the longer your brain stays online for learning, for performance, for fatigue, you're going to be a better athlete. So you're going to be more coordinated. You're going to be everything. So there's so much magic in those extreme isos, and there's so much to it that still people aren't even talking about all the benefits, which are immeasurable because I use them every day. Every day.
How are you certain that an athlete goes through a 5-minute isometric lunge, for an example, that their intentionality is what do you want it to be going into it? Is that a conversation you have beforehand? Is that something that you have as a intro talk with them, like an onboarding thing, or just how you set the standard for the session? Or what does that even look like?
So for me, and the way I've gone through it with Jay, and I've held up to 13 minutes ISO push-ups, and I had to videotape it and send it to him, right? And then he told me how bad it was. So no matter how long you prescribe isometric extremes for, it still starts around position. And if you can't get into the right position to start, 5 minutes isn't going to do anything for you. So for me, I've learned it like, let me teach the correct position first. Let me get you to experience these positions and what you might be thinking about while you're in those positions. And let's see how long that lasts. Is it 10 seconds, 20 seconds? Is it a minute? That's going to show me your training age, your emotional commitment to what we're doing, right? So if I said to a 14-year-old, okay, we're going to do 5-minute ISO extremes, I'd be the poorest gym owner you'd ever imagine. No one would come in and train. So I had to figure out different ways to trick them into doing that. And sometimes the emotional intelligence of the person you're training isn't on par with what you're trying to teach and what all the ISO extremes you can get from it, right? So you have to back it up and try to trick them into getting to those periods of time. So for me, with my high school athletes, we're rarely over 2 minutes, rarely. So we'll go 3x1, we'll go 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. We'll challenge the time to make sure they're staying engaged with what we're doing. And again, you're still going to be getting into the right position, which is going to recruit the correct muscles. You're going to have that neural stability. You're going to have joint angles and tension and balance and pressure and all those things. And it's going to teach you about tension and how to release it. So when you're talking about speed training, all these things are happening at one time. And that's the beauty of isometrics, is whether you know a lot about them or you know nothing about them, if you can get people in the right position and teach the synchronization of what we're trying to do with the muscle recruitment, you are now getting perfect recruitment, perfect synchronization, and you're getting a rewiring of your nervous system all in one. So I always tell people, in stillness, your chaos is organized. Because when you watch a young kid run, they look awful. But when they're doing an ISO extreme, you can put them in the position that they need to be in and tell them that's the standard of what you need to hold. So that stillness organizes all the chaos that they have when they're running, which I think is profound.
Dan, so as I told you earlier, I'm a javelin coach. I know that you work with a lot of sprinters and throwers too. And so do you ever have your throwers do isometrics in the power position? Because for me, we do a lot of positional work. We literally have a drill called the 3-position drill, where we go through certain phases of the final phase of the throw in the javelin throw, and then we will hold the position for maybe 5 to 10 seconds at the end. Since I've started listening to more of your podcasts, I've experimented with doing some isometrics in that power position. And I just wanted to hear it from you if you feel like there's benefit from that as a thrower as well, or if that's more of just maybe just the isometric lunge hold for translating to sprinting.
100%. I would get into the exact javelin position that you're in, into the extreme ranges of whatever it might be, and I'd begin to be able to perfect that position, what I'm doing with my eyes, what my posture looks like, what the end range feels like, and then you begin to hold and move extremely slow. That is the first phase of motor learning, is moving extremely, extremely, extremely slow, which is what extreme isometrics are, right? And everybody thinks that there's no movement, but there is eccentric movement. You're pulling yourself into position, right? So for a javelin thrower, I would say an extreme slow javelin throw, starting from the extreme position and going all the way through every nuance of the throw. Extremely slow. I'm talking a 5-minute javelin throw. That would enhance your motor learning more than anything that you could do for a beginner trying to learn the movement and try to perfect the movement. Now, for an Olympic level athlete, it might work in the beginning because it's a new novel stimulus. But then once they get going, starting to add resistance and starting to understand where the compensatory patterns are breaking down in that throw. There's a bunch of different things you can do isometric wise, from oscillating isometrics to just ways to get your brain organized in terms of throwing it. Throwing opposite style. I remember Jay used to have my pitchers doing extreme slow with the opposite hand pitching. So now the brain is driving from the motor cortex on the other side, which is pretty cool.
So with those extreme slows, I'm just trying to figure out where that would even be structured inside a normal workout plan. So how would you go about implementing that, whether that be in the warm-up, post-workout, intra-workout set, like during a heavy lift, something like that? Would be an off day, a technical skill day, just for people to, that's been a question that I've been getting a lot, is like, where do I even put this in during my normal training week?
So last week, my football team was in the weight room. We were in season. This is what the linemen were doing. They do an extreme slow bench press bar only by 2 minutes. They pull the bar into position, in perfect position. At the end of that 2 minutes, they rack it. Then they're doing 3 sets, 5 reps with a 5-second pause on their chest. That was their workout. What I did first was you entice the motor learning system. You start to activate all the muscles that need to be activated to get the correct groove of the motion done. And then you start adding your normal weightlifting, right? So we've recovered at the same time we're exposing to stimulus. So in terms of recruitment, our patterns that we're trying to do, our neural stability, all those things are happening when we're doing extreme slow for 2 minutes. So it allows you to stay calm under tension. It allows to predict and stabilize movement. And then you're doing the motion itself in an explosive manner. So we utilize some type of extreme slow or isometrics in every phase of our lifting. So then they come in there doing a lower body thing. Same thing, extreme slow squat, 135 pounds on the bar, 2 minutes. Pull it down so slow, you can't even see the bar move. At the end of 2 minutes, you're maybe at parallel. You lay the bar on the rack, you get up, put the bar back up on the rack, and now here we go. We're doing oscillating isometrics, 3 sets, 5 reps, the way we do oscillating isometrics. So we've kind of got all our motor units fired up. We're ready to learn movement, and we've also recovered at the same time that we're training. That's all my in-season work.
That's very interesting. I mean, it's just completely different than what you see traditionally just in season training is.
If you would watch our in-season training, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? Half the time, we're not even lifting. We're doing more neural stuff. Because I believe that if you can keep your neural pathways open and stimulated, that the whole movement process, that's easy. That's easy for your brain. It's, can you stop? What's the inhibition part of your brain doing? Can it stop you from doing dumb shit? And if you can train that part of your brain, the things that we do in a normal strength and conditioning program, it's very rudimentary. Like it doesn't stimulate at all, nor does it recover. It actually fatigues you more because it's just mid-range stuff. When you do isometrics, you're pretty much guaranteed motor unit recruitment. And when you're doing that, you're recovering at the same time you're training. Jay always used to say, like, if you stimulate the body 80%, it's going to recover at less than 80%. So you don't know if your organs are recovering at the same time your tissues are, at the same time your tendons are. Everything's recovering differently. If you stimulate it maximally, from the brain to the tendons to the muscle, everything's going to recover at the same rate because everything was stimulated.
That's reminding me a little bit of the Charlie Francis high-low system. Is that similar, same realm? It's like you have one max intensity day and one low intensity, like don't stay in that medium range.
Yeah, get out of the medium range because that's, Charlie Francis used to talk about fibers and the conversions and all that stuff. And I think he was 75% and under, and then he was 90% and over. I'm not far from that. I'm a 93 to 95% and over guy, and we don't do much tempo work. Our tempo work is our extreme isometrics.
So I've just been rereading Triphasic and hearing Cal talk about the importance of stress. So is that kind of the same thing that you're saying there, is stressing them maximally so it doesn't impair performance, but you're staying in that top end range, and you're saying the medium is just where the fatigue is outweighing the actual performance that you get?
Yeah, you got one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, and you're just burning gas. You're not going anywhere. So I think the isometrics train you neurally, right? So if you're being trained from a neural standpoint to turn on and turn off, I think that saves your body the wear and tear from the movement and the jumping and the landing and all that stuff. And you're getting that bang for your buck, and you're getting electrical flow. And I think that's the key. And it gives clarity to your brain. It gives clarity to the movement maps, the proprioception. Um, there's just so much to it. Like I did a big thing on my Patreon on isometrics, but it almost is like scratching the surface. Like there's so much more to it that, and I never believed this when I was with Jay, but you don't have to do anything else. You really don't. You really don't. If you're throwing the javelin and that's what you do, extreme isometrics around how you throw the javelin and every muscle that turns on or shuts off when you're supposed to is all that matters. It's all that matters. And can you recover from the last training session and the last time you threw it? And what's your current state of compensatory action? And how can we change it to better your performance?
You talked a lot about having the most bang for your buck. Are there certain isometrics that might be like a rear delt lateral raise that might not be as much return on investment compared to a deep push-up hold? Are they all like the same, or do you think that there's better ones than that?
There's better ones. I think the standards are an extreme push-up. And I like to go from an extreme slow push-up from the top, pulling yourself all the way down until you get into the extreme position, and then you're pulling yourself past that position, which ultimately there's no movement with that, right? So that would be one of them. The other one would be a lunge. I think those are your two fundamental ones. And then I like to throw in a skater lunge just because we change direction and you're going to be on one leg and you have to be in position to understand that stuff. So, yeah, I think there's three big ones. And then I think hanging from stuff is important. And you can create a whole program around those 3 or 4 exercises.
What would the skater lunge look like? Just having your foot elevated and then lunging to the side?
So if I stand sideways, I'd be on one leg. I'd hinge at the hip. I begin to bend over. So my back is now parallel to the ground. I take my back knee and I cross it behind my other knee. So now there's a balance element. My hands are straight down. I'm pulling myself into the ground.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering about that with the football, because obviously like with track we're sprinting straight, but then with, like you said, with the football there's the change of direction aspect. So how can you target that side to side movement? That's good.
Yep, and part of all these isometrics are staying calm under tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you begin to predict and stabilize movement, and now when you're high speed, your proprioceptive maps are wide open in terms of what you need to do and where you need to go. And Jay would always explain it to me like your brain knows the end and the beginning. Nothing that happens in between matters. I didn't really understand that until I started to really get into neurology and understand that there's this thing called perceptual resolution. And it talks about clarity and precision of your brain's map of the body and the environment. And it's almost like looking at like a grainy picture and a high definition picture, right? And slowing down the movement or extreme isometrics helps really get all your senses, your vestibular system, your visual system, your proprioceptive system, all acting together to be able to create these high definition pictures of movement. And you can teach a lot of movement through those extreme isometrics, which I don't think people spend enough time understanding. It's the basis of motor learning. Like if you look at any great system, like have you guys heard of the square one system?
Yes.
We're actually going to ask you about it, but
So Sean Sherman created that, fantastic human being. And when I first saw his stuff, I'm like, oh my God, it's isometrics. And he would say, you know, your joint system has satellites that communicate with your brain. And these isometric positions are like satellite systems, and they turn on and turn off, and they let your brain know where you are in space, what's safe and what's not. Wow, that connected a lot of dots. Did Jay Schroeder know that? Even if he didn't know that, holy shit, that's a performance dot that's connected right there. That's another benefit of why ISO extremes work the way they do. And Sean would say there's a hand grenade approach and there's a sniper approach. And he, with square one, has a sniper approach. I would think that Jay Schroeder, with his extreme ISOs and the way I utilize them, it's more of a hand grenade approach. Like you're covering all the bases. Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean, with the square one, we've had Zach Jungles and Jared Slater on the show, and I'm pretty good friends with them, and me and Dan talk with them quite a bit. And they were talking about their warm up and how they do warm ups very differently. And I'm sure you and Sean definitely influenced it a little bit, and same with Cal with like RPR, square one, the essential cheetah don't stretch mentality. Like, how do you go about? I mean, you already pretty much blew up the traditional strength and conditioning route, so might as well blow up the traditional warm-up route. How do you see warm-ups now, and how do you go about getting prepared for the session for whatever it is that day?
Yeah. So I always tell people, like, if you walked into my weight room, my warm up, we'll call it a warm up. I'm not even sure if I want to call it that anymore. Is the training, right? So you walk in and everybody's hanging from something. That's how we start every workout. Then we go through a series of about 10 to 12 isometric positions that if you ask Sean Sherman about, he'll tell you all about it. It's another hand grenade approach to just about every isometric position and or joint position you could get into, and we hold it for a period of time just so it starts opening up the window to the brain to say, hey, this is what we could experience during this workout. Then we're doing some type of iso extreme. We're doing some type of upper body and lower body separation to tell the brain, hey, this is how I have to be able to rotate and disassociate from my lower body to upper body, which I believe is grossly undertrained in this country. And it's what makes the elite athletes the way they are. Like if you watch Travis Kelce play, he can be running full speed and take his whole torso, turn, catch the ball while he's still running full speed this way, and then turn and get his torso lined up with his lower body again. Most people can't do that. So then we'll go into different types of Cal and Chris Corfus ankle stuff, where we're doing our stiffness stuff. So everything has its role, and you could call it a warm up, but it's certainly preparing you for your sport. And then when we're out on the field warming up, we do more of my Goodsided stuff. Have you seen me talk about Goodsided exercises?
No, I haven't heard this one yet.
Oh boy. Okay. So you guys both got to do this. All right, Dan, we'll do it with you.
All right.
So I want you to turn sideways to the camera.
So like this?
Yep, just like that. And show me shoulder flexion of that left arm. So lock your elbow out and go right up by your ear as far back as it goes. Awesome. Show me your right. So your right's better, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with that thought process, if we were going to strength train you right now, and we were doing some type of overhead movement, and you're a javelin thrower, so are you a right-handed javelin thrower?
Yes.
Okay, so your right goes further than your left, which is, I don't know, probably pretty normal, but for a baseball guy or a javelin thrower, it's probably going to be excessive. So in order to balance the body out, one would think that you have to work on some type of mobility on your left-hand side. Good-sided exercises say, let's work on your brain. So I want you to take your right arm, I want you to go back as far as you can, and I want you to try to increase the range of motion on your right side with it locked out. And you can even turn your torso a little bit to cheat the motion, like turn it to the right a little bit and just, let it go back a little bit further and then bring it all the way down. That's 1 rep. I want you to do 5 reps of that. Keep it locked out so we got a nice, even, good. And then you can bounce it at the bottom if you want. When you get all the way back there, we're going to do 5 reps of that. That's 3, good. And then let's do 2 more. Reach, 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 turn, get it back further. Good. Now this one, you're going to hold it back there as far as you can. Good. So probably doing that, you probably increased by about a 1/2 inch on your right side. I want you to show me your left side again. Watch how much better it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, so we didn't even do your left side, but because we gave your right side something to think about, your left side got better.
Wow.
So when my kids warm up, they balance themselves out structurally from right to left, top to bottom. That's one of the exercises they do every single day in the weight room. Because if you came in to strength train that, you'd be like this. This is what normal people are. Here, and then way back here. So if I'm training this, I just took that compensation pattern of right to left, and I just made it worse. So we balance that out, and then we strength train it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I was curious. So if you're doing isometrics before the workout, if some kids are getting not fatigued, but they're starting to get that pump feeling, say they're in their chest and then they go to bench press, have people ever given you pushback for that and say, oh, that's going to take away from their bench press numbers now?
Yeah. So when I first started doing it, it would happen all the time. But then I found guys that when I actually started teaching it correctly, they get stronger. I was at a clinic. This is one of those stories. As I get older, it gets better. So I'm probably in my mid-30s, all Jay Schroedered out, doing everything that he's doing. And I've got this defensive lineman that's been training in my gym, and he's a 2 1/4 for 50 guy. Like, he's a freak. So I get all these strength coaches in a room. They're all bald goatees and everything. And they're all like, what do you do to get stronger? I said, well, we do Iso Extremes. They're like, well, that can't get you stronger. So I have this kid come in. He's 6'1", 285 pounds. He sets up 3 plyometric boxes, and he goes down into an iso push-up between all of them, and he holds it for 4 minutes. 4 minutes. As I'm talking, I'm like, what's the combine record right now for, and it was, at that time, it was Glenn Dorsey. He did it 36 times. I think he did it. He gets up off of 4 minutes, goes over to 2 1/4 on the bench press. I hand it to him. He pumps out 40 reps. They were all like, oh my God. I'm like, getting strong is easy. That's easy. Because once you understand what needs to relax and what needs to contract, the ISO extremes take care of all of that. He was a freak. He could hold those positions perfectly. So to answer your question, when kids learn how to do it correctly, it's stimulating them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same page. I think about just from your side because I've heard you talk a lot about the parents that are saying, "Oh my God, he got so much faster," and you're like, "Oh, he hasn't even run yet. We've just done isos," but you don't want to tell them that, you know. So it's like, how do you go about like that communication aspect, like to people that might be skeptical?
Yeah, and that's and what ends up happening at first is they do get fatigued at first. But as they start to learn position and recruitment, you see it start to flip and then it stimulates. And they're like, holy shit. So right now, my senior group, they're so bought in that you'll see them doing ISO extremes for no reason. I'm not even telling them when they're doing it. And they're over there going, oh, this is what coach has to do. I'm like, who told you to do that? Oh, we know to do it. It's going to help us. Okay. So they're awesome. This group coming in behind them, my freshman and sophomore, they're still in the skeptical stages because they haven't seen it as much as the seniors, but they're watching the seniors do what they're doing on the field, and they're going, this crazy guy must know what he's talking about. And that's what ends up happening is you start to produce enough of the same result, and it's not like a stupid result, but enough of the same result where a normal kid is getting stronger, faster, and faster than everybody else. And that's what I think the key is can you take normal kids, normal athletes, and get them better faster by using these methods?
How often do you have them training, like per week?
So we train in season. We do one in-season workout on the field, and then we do a Saturday recovery in the weight room. So they train twice a week, sometimes three if I feel like they haven't gotten enough sprinting in, but mostly 2 times a week. Now, when they train in the off season, some of them train Tuesday, Thursday mornings and Monday, Wednesday, Friday after school. So the volume I can give them during the off season is ridiculous.
When you're sprinting, I've heard this before in a couple different podcasts. There's like these sprint complexes where it's not just sprint and rest, but you're doing exercises within almost like a circuit style. Because I'm trying to think of how to do with a big group. If you have one set of timing gates, you have 40 guys, those sprints are going to take quite a bit.
Okay, so what we do is this is DB Hammer stuff. Cal does it. So what we do is we create a performance cycle where they're doing exercises based off of what I view their movement issues are, right? So a lot of what we did this year, and I've done this in the last 3 years, and I've kind of changed my whole thought process around max velocity. We do more acceleration-based stuff. And can we accelerate from different positions? Because football is basically a game of if I beat you in the first 3 steps, it really doesn't matter how fast I am. I'm going to be running away from you. And about 2 years ago, I heard a guy by the name of Tony Villani speak. You know Tony at all?
The name sounds familiar.
Look his stuff up. He's fantastic. This is the drill he showed me that changed my thought process around max velocity. He said, take your fastest guy, put him on the goal line. Take your medium range guy and stand him 1 arm's length away from him. Maybe he's on the 3 yard line going out. Turn around and make them, they're like they were going to race, but they're standing right behind each other. So the fast guy's here, the slow guy's here. They're going this way. He goes, take everybody else that's training that day and tell them to go stand on the football field where you think the fast guy is going to touch the slow guy when I say go. So everybody stands about 5 yards away. They're like, oh, that guy runs 4.4. He's going to touch him in 1 step, blah, blah, blah. They all stand within 20 yards. So I tell them, all right, here's the caveat. the guy who's first, the slow guy, can leave when he wants. The guy who's chasing him has to go on his reaction. Okay. They start, boom. Not one of the guys guessed right. Not one of them. That touch occurred at the 40-yard line. What does that tell you? One step is everything. Everything. You can't recover from one step. So then I started pulling up film in football, and I'm watching. And I'm like, every time we're even and we know it's a race and we're going hard, nobody's catching us. And I don't have the fastest. I had a fast group this year, but in years past, we've got good speed, not great, but we're crazy accelerators. We can get going. So that really changed my whole philosophy. I'm going to spend time learning how to run and accelerate from different positions. And then I want to be able to react to it and do it over and over again. So we spend much less time doing maximal velocity stuff and way more time developing our acceleration stuff.
I heard that from Les Spellman. He was pretty much in the same boat because with his 40-yard guy. Are you familiar with Les?
Yeah. Yep. I'm spoken places with him. Yep.
Yeah, he like the first time I heard him, when he was going through a training camp with all his NFL guys, he said he didn't run 140. It was all 20s.
Yeah. Yep. And when I was training, when I did it back in the day, I knew exactly what I'd run in the 40 after I ran a 20. I knew exactly what I was going to run and what I needed to run in the 20 to be able to run. Because you can increase your maximum velocity. I'm not saying you can't, but you have way more of an upside accelerating 20 yards.
You can get a lot more volume in with those too.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And the chance for injury is way less. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And, Tony Holler's been hearing me talk about it a little bit, and Chris Corfus and I are kind of like on the same page with it. It's changing. That's all. And there's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes as the research spits out, and then what I do is I match my neural exercises with acceleration-based stuff, like to lock in that movement, to lock in that anticipatory postural control, that lean control, all these things that are regulated by your vestibular system that nobody else is doing. Because half of being able to run fast and accelerate is your ability to not be afraid to fall on your face. And you can train that. That's your vestibular system.
Something that I pretty much stole right from you, which I stole from Zach Jungles because he made a post about it, was that superset of the altitude drops and the curve sprinting.
Yeah. No, I gave him that at the Revolutions of Speed. That's like we potentiate lifts all the time in the weight room. We potentiate sprints.
I noticed a huge difference with some of my athletes doing that, and the feedback I got from one of my guys was like that. Everyone told me to stay lower. It's like, but I didn't know what that felt like. Yeah. Like that fall. It's like I didn't know idea what that meant. And so I was like, just replicate that feeling that you had on the box, but now apply it to this curve sprint. And he almost fell on his face just because how fast he took off the line.
Yeah, I have a theory that really fast kids who accelerate used to trip and fall a lot when they were kids because you're not afraid. You just get your head and your body out in front of your feet. And if you don't catch up with it, you're going to fall. If you catch up with it, you're running pretty fast.
What other drills would you use to potentiate the sprint? Because I just gave one today with a kid. It was a split stance wall overcoming ISO, about 3 to 5 seconds each side, almost like you're doing a sled push, but into the wall, and then go into a push-up sprint. And he texted me back right away. He's like, there's no way I'm this fast. It's like, I've never felt this fast before in a sprint. I was like, yeah, because you're potentiate. I used to use this as a cheat code for PR days all the time back in my old gym. So I was wondering what other tricks up your sleeve you got.
So from a pushing standpoint, that's fantastic. Now I'd add something with the visual system, whether we're tracking something horizontally, our saccades, or whether I'm tilting my head one way or the other to get some type of my extensors to fire on that side. So we'll do a lot with that. We'll do a lot of mathematical computations, right? That you have to add and subtract in your head, in your mind, is a certain part of your brain that allows your functional reach test to go further. When that happens, your ability to accelerate just expanded, just by utilizing a part of your brain that's going to protect you from falling. So yeah, there's a shit ton of different stimuluses you can use from a neurological standpoint that can help you. Except one of those things is being on a slant board. Just standing on a simple slant board fires up your vestibular system, right? Because as you lean forward on that slant board, your whole posterior chain needs to turn on to make sure you don't fall over. So that's ramping it up. So yeah, standing on a slant board, moving your head is a great stimulus for acceleration.
I was curious if you had an answer to this because I was doing this with a kid. It was the Cal Dietz goat drill, the infinity loops, and with the ball with going around his body, and then we were counting down from 100 by threes, fives, and sevens. And I was standing in the middle telling him to stare at me the entire time. But every time he would get tripped up, he would look up and to the left every single time. And it was like up and to the left every time. And I don't really have the answer for why he does that, but it was something that I noticed. And I was wondering if there's a better answer than just to stop looking at me, stop looking up that way and look at me.
When you are doing something multitasking, when you're multitasking like that, sometimes it becomes an overload too much, and the brain will just roll to what's reflexive to them. So up and to the left might be some type of compensatory pattern that they have. We'd have to do a shit ton of work to understand what that is, but I would say that's too much stimulus at that time. And that was one of the things I would tell Cal is, the goat drill, those things are awesome. All those things are great, but there is a point of no return. Like you're going to go someplace and push them over and you're going to overstimulate them. So the lady who created the infinity drills, Dr. Deborah Sumbeck, who lives right down the road here in Rochester from me, they start off, there's a progression to it. And as you add these multitasking, then it becomes even more specific to the problems that you're solving. Are they addition, subtraction? Are they something you have to carry the one and minus the three? Think about it in your head. You can't just come up with 5 plus 5, right? Am I staring at something? Am I looking down and to the left? Scott Robinson out of Australia, who is a fantastic neuro coach, would do infinity drills vertically and put your eyes down into the left or eyes down into the right, which has way more of a cerebellum influence, which I found tremendously beneficial. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. You just got to figure out which ways stimulate, not annihilate.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, when you're working with track and field athletes, do you ever, because I heard you talk about on one of your podcasts saying that fighters were really good at pushing through maybe a long duration isometric or a 400-meter sprint because they have that wired in them to just push past the point of discomfort. I've noticed in myself as well that typically my javelin athletes who also play football or wrestle typically tend to be a little bit just more tenacious and aggressive and can typically handle a little bit more workload. And I think my theory to that is obviously the physical part of it and the mental part of it that comes with trying to overcome your opponent, but also in football, you have the offensive playbook, you have the defensive playbook, you have different things that are requiring your brain to work and not just one facet of just throw. So like when we do different drills, they're able to kind of just learn a little bit quicker. So have you ever had that experience with football and wrestling and fighters?
Well, I do know what you just said is very true. The wrestlers, I love training wrestlers, love training MMA guys, just because their mentality to get it done and not ask questions as to why we're doing this, and not overanalyze it and just attack it is great. And I do think that when you give, I mean, one of my older coaches will say, how do you make a 4-4 guy run a 4-7? You give him a playbook. And, there's a lot of truth to that, but there's a lot of truth to giving them options. And when you start to utilize that as your way of creating what I call cognitive flexibility, meaning you're able to stop doing something stupid or go another way rather than the way that's going to get you hurt, you become a better athlete. So I do believe football players are more open to that. They can do that just because there's a little bit more bandwidth in what they're doing. A lot of times in track and field, because they're just running or they're just throwing, I like to expand their bandwidth a little bit. And it allows them to make mistakes and be able to recover from those mistakes a lot cleaner. Like some people can't get out of the blocks. If they get out of the blocks shitty, they can't recover to run a good race. Well, sometimes I'll start them in a shitty position out of the blocks and make them try to run a good race. So they're used to that, right? So there's a bunch of different ways to go through that, but I do believe that the more flexibility you have cognitively, the better you'll become as an athlete.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Brett and I have talked about that a lot too, is how I've worked with 180-meter plus thrower, and then the rest have been below 70 meters. And his ability to just pick things up and execute them within, whether it be that session or maybe we work on it for a couple of weeks and then we're on to the next thing, versus those less talented kids, we have to spend like a whole year on basically one or two technical refinements.
And that's what you're saying is 100% what DB Hammer used to say. Like you could give a young kid, 50 million different things to do, and they're going to get better at just about anything that you give them, right? Just because they're doing it. When you get to an elite level athlete, it's going to be pretty specific to the little changes, and they'll make those little changes in order to get a little bit better. And that's no different than just about anything that we do. It's just it's more apparent in track and field because it'd be like a 100-meter runner who runs 13 flat and a 100-meter runner that runs 9.9, right? You're going to get anything that you do with the 13 flat guy, he's going to get faster. If you just had him run 400 meters, he's going to get faster than 13 seconds in the 100. But that elite level athlete, you're going to have to really fine tune what he needs to be able to go 9.8 and not 9.9.
With DB Hammer, I've read a little bit of his stuff, and it's hard to find stuff on him because he's kind of a mythical legend now in the strength and conditioning world. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he had athlete profiles, correct? Or something that would not be so much of like a cookie cutter regular collegiate weight room activity where like everyone does this set program. He would break them up into like what they would need, and then whether that be just more speed, more power. Is that something that you're looking at with your guys, or how people come into your session, or is it more of a grenade approach that you were saying before?
So early on, when I first started doing it, and I was coaching track, and I was using DB Hammer's methods and Jay Schroeder's methods exclusively, I would do that. I would break kids down into how they moved, and then I would group them in certain groups, and they would have their exercises for the day. And with 120 kids on the track team, it was a pretty extensive plan where you'd have 5 or 6 groups of kids rotating through 5 or 6 different exercises. It was a lot, but man, it worked. It certainly worked. And it was feasible. And, if you were a guy not doing it by yourself and you were creating it with a group of coaches, I think it would be really good. As I started to get better at it, you can start to see what kids need. Like if you ask Chris Corfus how he writes his programs for his elite track teams that he coaches, he gives each kid a 3x5 card when they get to practice. If there's 10 sprinters that he's working with, he would give 10 cards. And some of them are the same exercises, some of them are different. And then he takes his 10 next sprinters and you put them in line with one of the other sprinters. And you group those kids and they're getting general training. But the top 10 ones are getting specific stuff that they need. So DB Hammer, this is how he did it. If you came in and he evaluated you, you were somewhere on the spectrum of neural duration, which is pure strength in your movement, or neural rate on the other side of that equation, which is pure speed. Your ability to turn on and turn off, I'd liken it to a tap dancer, as fast as you can. On, off, on, off, on, off. Somewhere in the middle, he called it neural magnitude, where you are this fine-tuned strength, speed, elastic, frictional component athlete that just moves awesomely. So if someone comes in on that duration side, you're going to give them more neural rate and neural magnitude to pull them this way on that chart. if somebody comes in and I mean, they can turn their feet over when they're running as fast as possible. They're on that neural rate side. Most basketball players are like that. And you pull them in with a little strength work and power work, they're going to end up in the middle. So it was all about training them of where they fell on that spectrum.
How would you be able to test that? Would it just be
In the weight room with a reactive jump, you can do it in the weight room with a 1 rep max bench press. Like a neuro duration guy is going to grind out that bench press, that 1 rep max. It's going to take him about 6 seconds to do it. Someone who's operating neural rate is going to take his max bench press and do it in like a second. Right? So their ability to display strength is going to be very, very, very quickly. So if you give them long duration isometrics, they're going to get even better. Same on the flip side. If you give that person trampoline runs that's really duration dominant, they're going to start to understand how to turn that strength on faster. And that's all it is finding different exercises that display what you're trying to change.
Did you ever dabble in the West Side barbell type of max effort, dynamic effort work?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Louis Simmons came out to my gym. Absolutely. Yep.
That's how I started. That was my background. Day one, I was college, senior year. I thought it was always funny that I came in with a West Side barbell shirt. I went to Springfield College, and my professor, Adam Fight, I don't know if you're familiar with Adam Fight, but he just looks at me and goes, "That's a very bold shirt to wear day one of collegiate S&C." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm all in." I was all into Louis. But just hearing like the neuro rate and the neuro duration, it just made me think of, well, dynamic effort is moving the bar as fast as you possibly can. And then max effort is the bar is going to move relatively slowly, but that's as much weight as you can possibly move.
Correct. Correct. And then, in the middle somewhere, there's the technique of oscillating isometrics, which is what I think is one of the most powerful athletic tools in training. Is it's incredible. And that's a whole nother probably podcast, but oscillating isometrics, the way people teach it is really different. Like I did an article with Matt Van Dyke from the Houston Texans on oscillating isometrics, and he learned it from Cal. And he's like, man, I never heard it explained like you just explained it. Well, I learned it from DB. And there were two different styles of oscillating isometrics. And then Mel Siff had his version. So all of them are oscillating isometrics and can be coined under that. But I think the way we do it is more powerful to sport, and to understand that being able to turn on and turn off and be able to get into extreme positions to do that, and then utilizing your frictional and your elastic components together. And then you can evaluate from there and be able to see exactly how well an athlete can release tension.
Do you use that not in with time, like how many reps of an oscillatory isometric you can do within a given time frame?
Yeah, so now I just tell them 5 reps, but I said we're not in a hurry to get the reps done, because in my oscillating isometrics, you have to build peak tension first before you release it. So it's not just rapid movement. It's build peak tension, then relax, then you're doing a reactive movement from that position, and then you're back to building peak tension again. So I say 5 reps, it might take them 25 seconds to do 5 reps, depending on how fast it takes them to build peak tension. When you're young and you don't get it, it takes you a long time to figure out how to contract everything voluntarily harder than what's holding the weight. And then you relax, and then you utilize your elastic system to drive the motion, which is pretty powerful.
Do you think accommodating resistance would help or harm that, like with band tension?
I think it complexes the movement, which you have to learn it in its basics first. You have to be able to do it with your own body weight first.
Yeah,
Then you start adding weight. And then if you're adding chains or bands or whatever you're doing, then that makes it more complex. But I wouldn't want to make it more complex before you really understand how to do it.
Yeah, that's been my whole thing recently with just emails or Instagram posts. Is people love to just skip all the steps and do the most advanced stuff. I've posted Adam Archuleta's plyometrics before, and Evan was saying, "How can I get like to that?" I was like, "Train 4 to 5 years and learn all the things that went into that." I was like, "That was the end product," and I think that's what people look at is the finalized product, and they want to do that without the years it took to build up to even be able to express that or say what you're saying.
And I tell you what, and that infuriates him to this day, is because I've had a lot of great conversations with Adam. He's a fantastic human being. And, he's like, the stuff I had to do to get to where I was unbelievable. And people just think that they're just going to go through the motions, and you can't. In that system, you can't. Maybe in somebody else's system, if you want to get certain results or do whatever, it works great. You got faster, you got stronger, whatever. But in order to replicate what Adam Archuleta did, you got to be a different human being. Like you got to really, you talk about pipes, you got to really buy in.
His training montage, Dan actually sent it to me, which I thought was really cool, and what led me down the full rabbit hole by listening to him talk with you on Tony Haller's podcast, talking about, like, this is what you guys were alluding to before with the different mentalities of like fighters or football guys in track, is like having that certain type of darkness within you to like tap into. Like, and then Tony's like, darkness, he's a track guy, he didn't know about the football darkness. Like, I've trained football guys, dudes who would pop their shoulder out, go up against the brick wall and pop it back in and finish the set. It's like, I think that's kind of darkness there. It's just, I think that was really cool to hear him say, and what should help people understand is just the training's not for everybody.
Yeah. And when you like, there's a lot of like the West Side Barbell guys were all like that, right? But Jay's system took that mentality and made it fine-tuned, precise. Here's exactly what you're thinking about to produce this result. Where the West Side Barbell guys, I don't want to say this out loud because Jesus, if they ever found me, they'd kill me. But they were just nuts. Let's throw his heavy weight on. There wasn't a method to the madness. There was, but there wasn't. Not like Jay. Jay had a reason why he wanted you to think what you wanted to think. And there was always that stimulus needed to happen.
Talk about from a coach's perspective where you have to have so much attention to detail when you're working with these kids to teach them exactly what to think, when to think, how to think it. How do you do that in a group setting? Or how do you have that, maybe even the energy and the context to understand how to explain it to each kid differently?
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. And I've been doing it for a number of years. And I'm not saying it's getting easier, but what I tend to do is I'll group kids into 10 or 12 kids that get it. And then I tell my coaches, don't Donald Duck. And this is what Urban Meyer used to say, don't Donald Duck coach. Anybody can coach that kid over there who's in perfect position, gets it, is motivated, and does all that. Go coach the kid that's close to getting there. And when you do that, and then you start to have those kids train next to the 10 kids that get it, then all of a sudden they're sucked in and they become 10 more. Then you go find 10 more of the kids that are on the lower half, and you keep building it that way. So then you got a group of kids in the weight room that all are trying to compete against each other in terms of who has the best position.
I think that's what the magic was at Westside, in my opinion, from what I've read and from what I've watched. Is I think it was Dave Tate talking about a dynamic effort day, like going up against somebody, and they ended up doing 40 sets because the other guy wouldn't quit, and they just kept going back. The bar wasn't even moving fast anymore. It was just the sake of getting it up. It's like, but that competitive mindset and that tribe mentality, I think that was what the method to the madness was having that community of dudes that just really wanted to get after it.
And you take that one further to DB Hammer's method, where he used to time shit and do everything based off of a drop off, which I think is brilliant, right? So if you're running a fly 10 and you're running to 97% of your capacity, when you're running at 95%, you're done. So you can't fake it and go, oh, I'm working really hard. Nope, you didn't run 97% of your maximum. You're done. Well, I get one more try. Okay, get one more try. If you can't do it, you're done. Okay, do it. This kid did 10 sets. This kid did 3 sets. This kid did 4 sets. Everybody with a different volume based off of the drop-off. I think drop-off training takes Westside Barbell and it just highlights, okay, here's how you can get normal kids to compete against each other.
Kids hate that. Yeah, kids. I've used that before with the sprints, and everyone wants one more. They're always the one more guys.
But if you train them to say, no, you don't get one more, your one more was the last one, you weren't there mentally. Oh shit. Next time they come back, I ain't getting out. And that's where they start to develop that wrestling mentality that they never knew what it was until they the wrestlers have an internal clock in their head that they're constantly going against somebody or themselves or time or whatever. A normal track kid doesn't understand that, especially a distance kid, until you put it on a scoreboard and they go, "Ooh, I only ran that." Yeah, that's bullshit. You better start running. And then the time turns you into somebody who's chasing that intensity.
Do you have leaderboards at your gym? Do you have like PRs or anything? Nothing.
Nope.
And you.
And do I think they're okay? Sure, but I would do them based off time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And kids know, like we'll have like a club, and it's an unheard of. Like we don't make T-shirts or anything. You need to run 20 miles per hour, or you're not playing on our defense. You need to run 23 miles an hour if you think you're elite. And then they see it on ESPN, like, oh shit, that guy ran 20. We had this guy run 20. And then they start going, oh, okay. So now they're shooting for something.
Yeah, I think that's high school kids definitely always need a goal to shoot for. I think especially in that team environment.
But when we set them for the bench press and we set them for all those things, how many times in high school does the kid who bench 135 kills everybody that benches 300 and they just are better football players? Like I tell people all the time, like we got a kid on our team. He's got an offer from Arkansas. He's got an offer from University of Buffalo. He's fantastic. He's 6'3". He spends minimal time in the weight room. Minimal time. He's our best football player. And if he spends every day in the weight room, he'll still be our best. If he spends no days in the weight room, he's still going to be our best. And that's just the fact of life. Now, if he wants to go compete at a high level in college, he's going to have to like the weight room, or else he ain't going to be able to advance to where he needs to go genetically. But, there's always that motivated kid in high school that just doesn't have the numbers. I got a kid, he'll be the defensive player of the year in our conference. I mean, he works his ass off in the weight room, but his numbers don't kill you. What kills you is his ability to chase you and catch you and tackle you. That's why I like the acceleration part of it. It's just I'm chasing somebody.
So would you say you'd rather have a guy that runs a 1.410 versus a 4.440?
Yeah. Yep.
That just came up on my Twitter today. I don't even know who posted it, but I was like, that's a kind of a good question to ask.
Yep.
Yeah, I always said too that in high school sports, the kids that are skinny and wiry and fast, but they're still strong without living and breathing the weight room, they end up being the best most of the time because then they go to the college program and they develop and get bigger and stronger, but they keep the speed and the athleticism that they had. I mean, I see that all the time where like a wide receiver will then go to college and then become a tight end, or a tight end will go to college and then become an offensive lineman or something where, they're going to be maybe not as skilled to keep going at that position, but they focus on the weight room and get bigger and stronger, and they might, adapt their position and have a lot of success at the next level. I've seen that over and over again because I was that big kid that got fast when I was 21, not the inverse, so it was like almost late for me.
Yeah, and that's another tribute to ISO Extremes is it takes care of the coordination problem. Most kids, like when my son was starting to go through his growth spurt, he became uncoordinated we went right into ISO Extremes, and it took care of that. It takes care of it because you're not constantly rehearsing these motor patterns of shitty movement. You're going into pure movement, pure motor control, motor learning, and you're not even moving. So you're not perfecting any of the shitty patterns that you were doing. And I think that made him way better, way better. And it's working backwards for him.
In terms of sprinting, I mean, I've known all like the A series drills, the marches, the switches, the skips. And I just had the thought today of using a metronome for a march. I don't know. Is that anything that you've ever used before? Or I know you've used the metronome before, but
I do use a metronome for a variety of different things, and I was going to get into this, but um, so you can use a metronome if you're talking about ground contact times and trying to match that. That's great, but then you have to worry about the application of force to make sure that's on par with how you're propelling yourself. But I like to use a metronome in the weight room with movement without weight. So we'll take a what they use in training people to draw a gun and shoot it, and what their par time is in terms of draw to shoot. So you hear two beeps. You hear a beep to get you ready, and then you hear beep beep, and you have to complete the motion in between the two beeps. And I screw around with how fast that is. And kids are like, oh my God, but they start moving at a different clip that they never knew they could move to because they're hearing the speed, not seeing it, they're hearing it. And one of those things we used to do that DB Hammer taught me was if you want to make a kid break 11 flat in the 100 meters, let them run for 10.9 seconds and let something go off to where they know where they are, where the finish line is, and how far they got to move between a 10.8 and an 11 flat. Does that make sense? So now the speed has become something they can see. Okay, I got a cone here. This is where I was when the clock went off at 10.9. If I go that much further, I'm running a 10.9 meter dash. That's crazy. I can do that. So it makes speed come to visual. So now we're doing it in the weight room where we're making them hear what speed sounds like and be able to start and finish in between those two sounds. That's been profound for us.
you do that with upper body and lower body.
We do. We have them bench press. Like I'll have them put, everybody talks about, can you do this bench press within this much time as you're pushing the concentric? Well, I have them get it off the rack. They hear the first beep, that gets them set. That's their anticipatory postural control. Their body gets ready to move. And then they hear a beep, beep. And in between those beeps, they got to go down and up with it. And it's amazing to watch the kids learn themselves into speed by hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just speeding up the eccentric portion too, which I think a lot of people don't talk about as
They're
much.
afraid of. They're afraid of. And then there's the transition. And then there's, is it a full rep? And then there's so many things to think about that the beeps are teaching them in between the beeps. And you don't start it that fast, but you start it to where they can get it. Some kids still can't get it. They tell them, drop the weight, drop the weight, drop the weight. And then it becomes an auto-regulated way to train speed, strength. Instead of just saying it's 40% of your one rep max, well, we don't know. For what speed? If I want elite speed, this is what it sounds like. You put the weight on that you can match the elite speed.
Do you use, so you just use the beeps. Have you ever played around with the velocity-based training at all too to see?
I did that 20 years ago. Yeah, I did. And I like it, but I like the sound better rather than I'm just pressing it as fast as I can. Well, how fast is fast? What does that sound like? Oh, I felt like that was fast. Well, it really wasn't. Well, why not? Well, because that's what this thing said. It said you didn't move it that fast. It's kind of like speed. Like you're running across the time and you're like, oh, that was as fast as I can run. No, it's not. It sucks. So you're using that to train you. Now you're using something from an auditory standpoint. So one of your senses is being activated to tell you what speed really is. That's all. It's just a different way to comprehend it.
In terms of sprinting, I've had this happen with a lot of my athletes where I give them more of my muscle bound strength, typical footballers. And I'd say their first one's their warm up, like just go at like 80 and 90%, like stride it out. And that tends to always be their fastest rep.
Because they're tensed up, they're tight, they're like, oh, I want to go 100 miles an hour, and that always makes it worse. 100%.
How do you go about training that relaxation piece instead of just telling them over and over again to relax?
So one of the things that Tony Villani talks about is when he does his acceleration runs, he makes you change direction at the end of it, 5 yards out of it. right? So you have to be relaxed and under control to be able to change directions from that speed. That's what creates elite players, is the ability to change direction from the current speed that you're running, right? So if you hear Justin Jefferson talk, how many elite Hall of Fame receivers have run 4.2? There's none. There's none. Maybe Randy Moss. Everybody else controls their speed. Jerry Rice looks like he runs 4.4. The guy runs 4.6. He can control his speed in and out of cuts. So when you start to teach that part of relaxation, who cares what your max velocity is? Because if you can get 80% of your max velocity, but yet you can come to a stop and change direction and go the other way, oh, you're lethal.
I mean, I've heard typical like the decel work too. Just how do you go about training it with just altitude drops and the ISOs, or is it actually programmed inside the workout where you're working on deceleration patterns as well, so they're actually moving effectively out of those cuts?
So a lot of what we do when we start in the summer is you have a 10-yard fly into a 10-yard sprint. Okay. And we time that and we try to get as fast as possible. You only got 10-yard run up. That's all acceleration based. Then we go a 10-yard run up into a 10-yard sprint to a change of direction 90 degrees timed. And you'll see kids start to have to slow down their 10 to be able to complete a faster 90-degree turn. That teaches them exactly what controlled speed is. And Tony Villani calls it game speed. I encourage you guys to look his stuff up. It's incredible in terms of understanding like speed on the field, because a lot of these guys aren't 4.3 guys. They're guys that run 4.5, 4.6, but have learned to manage their speed to come in and out of breaks better than anybody. That is part deceleration, that is part acceleration, and that is part having your brain believe you can stop and go the other direction. And that creates separation, and it goes back to that one step. You get one step, you're way ahead.
Do you ever do any barefoot plyometrics, barefoot jogging, or barefoot bounding to help with the ankle stiffness and relaxation at all?
Yeah, we do. A lot of our in-season stuff is barefoot, out on the turf or out on the grass that we're working on. And I do that more for proprioceptive and tactile stimulation and to change the environment of the foot. Yeah, and then I want them to feel what it feels like when we're going into our acceleration patterns of how that ankle rocker, how that foot hits the ground, and I want them to feel it. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's been a big part of what we do with the javelin approach as well, just because, I mean, it's all relaxation. You have to be able to run fast, but you have to be able to relax and control the ability to then, like you were talking about earlier with Travis Kelce, you got to be able to run forward, but your torso is turned to the side. And then you got to be able to open up and then stop and throw and then accelerate through the throw. But as we know with throwing, you can't tense up and be constricted. You need to be relaxed when you throw, because otherwise you're going to blow out your arm. So the whole relaxing while we run aspect is super key into our development as well.
100%. So it's a controlled run. It's a controlled sprint. Same thing in the long jump and the triple jump. If you're going like Marion Jones, everybody's like, she should jump the farthest of any long jumper. Well, she's going hell bent down that runway. She can't stop. And the long jump is like the pole vault, but your leg is the pole, right? Yeah. You're running full speed. You stick your leg in the ground and you fly.
Yeah.
And my long jumper was faster than she was from 1 meter to 5 meter from the board, because she wasn't slowing down. She was actually accelerating, but could control that. Yeah. Marion Jones couldn't control her speed because she's just a straight ahead fast girl, which is awesome. If you put those two scenarios together, she jumps 28 feet, but you can't. you got to be able to absorb that energy and stop it. So it's got to be under control.
Yeah, I mean, we see that all the time with people starting crazy fast and then slowing down to a complete stop when they throw. Like they might as well have done like a 5-step.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You got anything?
No, I'm good. That was awesome.
Dan, I feel like we could have kept going for like another 2 hours,
I know,
but
I get on these things. I can't stop talking.
we are unfortunately out of time, but that was incredible. I mean, we have a lot of different resources to definitely look into and dive down some deeper rabbit holes, but I loved every second of that. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us your experiences and what you've learned and what you're doing currently. And see you in Chicago.
Awesome. I look forward to it. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
Make
it'd be
sure
really
you
awesome.
come right up to me. Introduce yourself.
I
I
will.
look
Don't
forward to
worry.
meeting you. Dan, it was good to meet you too, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It was awesome.
All right. Talk soon, guys.
Talk to you
All
later.
right.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye.